The soldier grabbed my wrist with fingers cold as winter steel, and when I looked down, his hand was transparent. I could see straight through his pale flesh to the bones underneath, and beyond that, to my own arm covered in blood that had not been there seconds before. "You walked the trench during the forbidden hours," he said, his voice like wind through a broken window. "Now you belong to the regiment. We march every night from midnight until dawn, and we have been marching since October 9th, 1864. Fresh souls keep the formation strong. Some of us are fading into nothing, becoming less than memory. We need replacements to hold the line. I am James, 26 years old, and I should have listened to the warnings. I should have stayed away from Ravenfield battlefield after dark. But I am a doctoral student at Georgetown University, researching Civil War battlefield preservation, and Ravenfield seemed like perfect dissertation material. The battlefield sits in rural Virginia, 3 hours southwest of Washington, hidden in the Appalachian foothills where most tourists never venture. Over 18,000 soldiers fell there in a single day of fighting. The landscape remains untouched since 1864. The trenches still cut through the hillsides. The observation posts still stand on the ridges, and the mass graves still hold the bones of boys who died thinking their sacrifice would mean something. I arrived at Ravenfield on October 9th, not knowing the significance of the date. The visitor center sat empty when I pulled into the gravel parking lot at 2 in the afternoon. A ranger station occupied a small building near the entrance, but the windows were dark. A handwritten sign taped to the door read, "Closed for annual memorial. Return October 10th. I should have left then. Driven back to the highway, found a hotel. Returned the next day when staff would be present. But I had driven 3 hours, and the afternoon sun made everything look peaceful and safe. I grabbed my camera bag, my notebook, and my GPS unit, and started walking toward the main trench line. The trenches at Ravenfield run for nearly 2 miles, zigzagging across the hillside in a pattern that made sense to military engineers in 1864, but looks chaotic now. Trees have grown up around them, their roots breaking through the earthen walls. Wooden support beams installed by the Park Service keep the trenches from collapsing completely, but everything has a sense of decay, of time slowly erasing human effort. I walked along the main trench, taking photographs and measurements. The afternoon passed quickly. The sun dropped behind the western ridge around 6 in the evening, and the temperature fell with it. October in Virginia can be warm during the day, but the nights come cold and sharp. I should have noticed how quickly the darkness arrived, how the shadows seemed to pour into the trenches like liquid. But I was focused on my research, on getting the documentation I needed. At 7 that evening, I found the memorial plaque. It stood at the deepest part of the main trench, a bronze marker mounted on a stone base. The text read Ravenfield Trench. October 9th, 1864. Here fell 3,000 Donnesounder, soldiers Union and Confederate in 3 hours of fighting. They rest in this ground disturb, them not. Below the official inscription, someone had carved additional words into the stone base. The letters were rough, cut with a knife or sharp rock. 5 rules for those who walk these grounds after dark: do not enter the trenches between midnight and dawn. If you hear drums after sunset, leave immediately. Do not respond if someone in uniform speaks to you should you see soldiers marching in formation. Stand completely still if blood appears on your hands. Run to the nearest road and do not look back. I photographed the plaque, the unofficial rules, the entire memorial. Part of me recognized these as warnings, genuine attempts to protect visitors from something dangerous. But the rational part of my brain, the part trained in academic research and evidence-based conclusions, dismissed them as local folklore, ghost stories that accumulate around battlefields like moss on stone. I checked my phone. 7:32 in the evening. Still hours before midnight. Hours before the first rule would even apply. I decided to continue my survey work, document the northern section of trenches, then return to my car around 10 and drive to a hotel. That was my plan. I did not account for how the trenches twist and turn, how easy it is to lose direction when darkness falls completely. I did not account for my phone battery dying at 8:15, taking my flashlight and GPS with it. And I definitely did not account for the drums. They started at 8:47 exactly. I remember checking my watch, one of those old mechanical ones my grandfather gave me, the kind that does not need batteries. The drums began as a distant rhythm, so faint I thought it might be my own heartbeat. But it grew louder, more distinct, a marching cadence, steady and slow, coming from somewhere to the south. Rule number 2, if you hear drums after sunset, leave immediately. I turned north away from the sound and started walking faster. The trenches made navigation difficult. They zigzagged and branched, some paths leading to dead ends where the earthen walls had collapsed. I climbed out of the trench thinking I could navigate better on open ground. But the moment my head cleared the top, something whistled past my ear. A sharp sound like a fast-moving insect, then another, and another bullets. Someone was shooting at me. I dropped back into the trench, my heart hammering. This had to be a mistake. Maybe hunters in the woods not realizing anyone was on the battlefield. Maybe Park Service using some kind of deterrent system. But the bullets kept coming, striking the earthen wall above my head, throwing dirt into my face. I ran deeper into the trench, stumbling over roots and rocks. The shooting continued, following me. Bullets tracking my movement like whoever was firing had clear line of sight despite the darkness. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But I kept running until I turned a corner and almost collided with him. A soldier stood in the center of the trench. He wore a dark blue Union uniform, the kind with brass buttons and a wool coat that went to the knees. He carried a rifle musket with a bayonet attached. His face looked young, maybe 20 years old, with a thin beard and eyes that reflected the moonlight in a way human eyes should not. "You should not be here," he said. His voice sounded wrong, like it was coming from underwater, distorted and hollow. "Civilians do not belong in the trenches after dark. Rule number 3. Do not respond if someone in uniform speaks to you." I pressed my back against the earthen wall and said nothing. The soldier stepped closer. I could see details now. His uniform was torn in several places. Dark stains covered the front of his coat. A hole in his chest just below the left collarbone went straight through. I could see the trench wall behind him through the wound. "The shooting will continue until dawn," he said. "We fight the same battle every night. Union on the North Ridge, Confederates on the South. We have been fighting since October 9th, 1864, and we will fight forever unless someone breaks the cycle." He adjusted his rifle. "But you cannot help us. You are just another lost civilian who ignored the warnings. By morning you will join the regiment, and you will fight with us every night until you fade into nothing." He turned and walked away, disappearing around a bend in the trench. I stood frozen, trying to process what I had seen. A ghost, an actual spirit of a dead soldier, still fighting a battle that ended over a century ago. My academic training had no framework for this. My rational mind rejected it completely, but the evidence was undeniable. The transparent hand, the wound through his chest, the impossible way his voice sounded. I forced myself to keep moving. The drums had gotten louder, closer, and now I heard other sounds, footsteps, hundreds of them. The synchronized marching of troops in formation, voices shouting orders, the mechanical sounds of rifles being loaded. I checked my watch. 11:43 in the evening. 17 minutes until midnight. 17 minutes until rule number 1 took full effect. The trench opened into a wider area, a junction where 3 different paths met. Wooden crates were stacked against one wall, the kind used for ammunition in the 1860s. A rusted canteen hung from a peg driven into the dirt. And in the center of the junction, someone had arranged stones in a circle with a piece of paper placed in the middle. I picked up the paper. It was old, yellowed, the edges crumbling. The text was written in faded ink. "To those who find this message, we are the 14th Pennsylvania Infantry C Company. We have been trapped in these trenches since October 9th, 1864, when Confederate artillery killed all 47 of us in a single bombardment. Every night at midnight, we rise and fight the battle again. We cannot leave. We cannot rest. We can only march and shoot and die over and over. If you are reading this during daylight, leave immediately and never return after dark. If you are reading this after sunset, you may already be marked. Check your hands." I looked at my hands. They were clean. No blood, no marks. Relief flooded through me. Maybe I was not marked. Maybe I could still escape. Then I noticed my watch. 11:59. 1 minute until midnight, the drum stopped. The footsteps stopped. Complete silence fell over the battlefield. Even the wind died. Even the insects went quiet. The world held its breath. Then midnight came. The trench filled with soldiers. Not gradually, not a few at a time. One moment I stood alone in the junction. The next moment, dozens of men in blue uniforms surrounded me. They appeared from nowhere, materializing out of the darkness like photographs developing in solution. They looked solid at first. Normal men with normal faces. But as my eyes adjusted, I saw the truth. Some had wounds that should have killed them instantly. Missing limbs, crushed skulls, bayonet holes through vital organs. Others looked intact but moved in ways that defied physics. Their joints bending at wrong angles, their feet not quite touching the ground. One soldier stood directly in front of me. He had no left arm, just a torn sleeve hanging empty at his side. His face was covered in dirt and powder burns. He looked at me with eyes that held no light, no life, just exhausted determination. "You are in the combat zone," he said. "All personnel must take up arms and defend the position." "I am not military," I said, breaking rule number 3 without thinking. "I am just a researcher." I did not know. Ignorance does not exempt you from duty. He reached into a crate and pulled out a rifle musket, the same kind they all carried. He thrust it into my hands. "You will take position on the northern wall. When the Confederates attack, you will fire until the ammunition is exhausted. Then you will fix bayonets and hold the line." The rifle felt impossibly heavy in my hands. The wood was cold and damp. The metal barrel had rust spots. This was not a museum piece or a reproduction. This was an actual weapon from 1864, preserved somehow, kept functional by whatever force animated these spirits. "I cannot do this," I said. "I will not fight your war." The soldier without an arm grabbed the front of my jacket and pulled me close. His breath smelled like grave dirt and old copper. "You walked the trenches during forbidden hours. You ignored the warnings. You are ours now. You will fight or you will die and then fight anyway. Those are the only choices." He shoved me toward the northern wall where other soldiers were taking positions. Some looked human. Others were clearly spirits, their forms flickering and transparent. And among them I saw living people, modern civilians in hiking clothes and jeans, a woman in her 30s with a camping backpack, an elderly man in a photography vest, a teenage boy in a college hoodie, all of them holding rifles, all of them staring with blank expressions. "How long have they been here?" I asked the soldier next to me, a man with a hole through his throat that whistled when he breathed. "The woman came 6 days ago. The old man, maybe 2 weeks. The boy, he has been here since summer. Time works differently in the regiment. Some nights feel like minutes. Others stretch for years." I looked at the teenage boy more closely. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken. His college hoodie had a logo, University of Virginia, class of 2024. This year, he had been trapped here for months, fighting every night, unable to escape. "Can they leave?" I asked. "Can any of us leave?" The soldier with the throat wound shook his head. "Once you take up arms during the midnight hours, you become part of the formation. The only way out is to complete your service, but the service never ends. The battle just repeats. We fight, we die, we reset, we fight again." Artillery fire erupted from the southern ridge. Not the sound of cannons, but the actual shells. I saw them arc through the night sky, trailing sparks. They exploded in the trench junction behind us, throwing dirt and wooden splinters in all directions. The soldiers around me did not flinch. They had seen this bombardment 1,000 times before. "Incoming!" someone shouted. "Confederate assault!" Gray uniformed soldiers appeared on the southern ridge, hundreds of them, charging down the slope toward our trench. They carried rifles with bayonets fixed. They screamed the rebel yell, that high-pitched shriek that made your bones vibrate. And they ran straight at us, fearless, ready to kill or die. "Fire," the officer commanded. Every soldier on the northern wall raised their rifle and fired simultaneously. The sound was deafening. The smoke was blinding. I saw Confederate soldiers fall, struck by bullets, but they rose again immediately and kept charging. My rifle fired without me pulling the trigger. The recoil slammed into my shoulder. I watched the bullet strike a Confederate officer in the chest. Watched him stumble, watched him keep coming. The weapon reloaded itself, my hands going through the motions automatically. Muscle memory I did not possess taking over. We fired again and again. The Confederates reached the trench. Soldiers on both sides collided in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Bayonets and rifle butts and fists. Men grappling in the narrow space, falling, stabbing, clubbing. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. Screaming and cursing in a dozen different accents. Pennsylvania Dutch and Georgia drawl and Irish brogue. I tried not to fight. Tried to drop the rifle and retreat. But my body would not obey. My hands gripped the weapon. My arms swung it like a club. I hit a Confederate soldier in the head. Heard his skull crack, watched him fall and rise and attack again. This was hell. An endless loop of violence where nobody could truly die because we were all already dead, or becoming dead, losing our humanity with each repetition. The fight lasted for what felt like hours. Eventually, the Confederate soldiers retreated. Our position held. Bodies lay scattered in the trench, Union and Confederate mixed together. Then everything reset. The bodies disappeared. The soldiers returned to their starting positions. The drums began. We were going to do it all again. How many times? I gasped to the soldier with the throat wound. How many times do we fight each night? Until dawn. The battle runs from midnight to 6 in the morning. We die and reset maybe 40 or 50 times. Then the sun comes up and we fade and we rest until the next midnight. I checked my watch. 12:23 in the morning. 5 hours and 37 minutes to go. 40 more battles, 40 more times dying and killing and losing pieces of my humanity. I looked at my hands. Blood covered them now. Dark red, almost black in the moonlight. It had appeared while I was fighting, manifesting from nowhere, seeping up through my skin like my body was remembering wounds I had not received yet. Rule number 5. If blood appears on your hands, run to the nearest road and do not look back. I dropped the rifle. The soldiers around me turned to stare. Dropping your weapon in combat was desertion, a capital offense. But I was not a soldier. I was a graduate student who had made a terrible mistake, and I was not going to spend eternity fighting a war I had no part in. I ran, climbed out of the trench while the soldiers shouted behind me, sprinted across open ground toward where I thought the parking lot might be. Bullets chased me. Not modern bullets, but mini balls. Those heavy conical projectiles that could shatter bone. They struck the ground around my feet, throwing up geysers of dirt. The blood on my hands made them slippery. I wiped them on my jeans, but it did not help. The blood was not on the surface. It was in the skin, part of me now, a mark that would never wash away. I reached a dirt road, not the main entrance road, but one of the old service paths that wound through the battlefield. Rule 5 said run to the nearest road and do not look back. I followed that rule. Kept running, my lungs burning, my legs cramping, but I did not stop. Behind me, the drums got louder. The battle continued without me. The regiment did not need me specifically. There were plenty of other souls trapped in the cycle, but I could feel them pulling at me, trying to drag me back. The connection was there now, established the moment I picked up that rifle, the moment I fired at another human being, even if that human being was already a ghost. The road emerged from the trees into open farmland. I saw lights in the distance. A highway, maybe half a mile away. Civilization, safety, the world of the living. I pushed myself harder, ignoring the pain. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Not the synchronized marching of the regiment. Just one person, running at the same pace as me. I did not look back. Rule 5 was absolute. Do not look back. James, a voice called. James, please stop. I knew that voice. Recognized it immediately. My younger brother, Tyler. But Tyler was in California, working as a software engineer in San Francisco. He had no reason to be in Virginia, no reason to be on this battlefield. James, I need help. I am hurt. It was Tyler's voice. Exactly right. The same slight lisp on the S sounds, the same inflection. But I remembered Rule 3. Do not respond if someone speaks to you. And I remembered what the soldier had said. The regiment needed fresh souls. It would use any method to recruit them, including mimicking voices of loved ones. I kept running. The footsteps behind me grew faster, closer. I could hear breathing now, ragged and desperate. James, please. They shot me. I am bleeding. I need you. My heart was breaking. Every instinct screamed to turn around to help my brother. But I knew it was not really Tyler. It was something else. Something wearing his voice like a mask, trying to trick me into looking back, into breaking the final rule. The highway appeared ahead, a 2-lane road cutting through the farmland. I could see cars passing, their headlights bright and real and completely mundane. Safety was 50 yards away, 40, 30. The footsteps stopped. The voice went silent. Whatever had been chasing me gave up at the edge of the battlefield's influence. I crossed onto the highway shoulder, stumbled to a halt, and finally looked back. The road behind me was empty. No soldiers, no spirits, no fake version of my brother. Just darkness and trees and the distant glow of the battlefield where the fighting continued without me. I collapsed on the grass beside the highway, gasping for air. My hands were still covered in blood. My clothes were torn. I smelled like gunpowder and death. But I was free. I had escaped. A truck pulled over. The driver, a middle-aged man with a concerned expression. "You okay, son? You look like you have been through hell." "I need to get away from here," I said. "Please, I need a ride to the nearest town." He helped me into the passenger seat. As we drove away, I watched the battlefield recede in the side mirror. The trees, the trenches, the place where 3,000 soldiers died and continued dying every night. The driver tried to make conversation, asked what happened, but I could not explain. How do you tell someone you spent hours fighting in a ghost army? How do you describe the feeling of your rifle firing on its own? Your body moving without permission? Your humanity slowly draining away? He dropped me at a motel in the nearest town, a place called Thornton Springs, about 20 miles from the battlefield. I checked in, paid cash, and locked myself in the room. The first thing I did was wash my hands. Hot water, soap, scrubbing until my skin turned red and raw. The blood did not come off. It had faded slightly, turned from black to dark brown, but it was still there. Under the fingernails, in the creases of my palms, a permanent stain marking me as someone who had walked the forbidden ground and survived. I tried to sleep but could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the Confederate soldiers charging, heard the rifle fire, smelled the blood. At 3 in the morning, I gave up and turned on the television, needing something normal and boring to ground me in reality. The local news was running a story about Ravenfield battlefield. A reporter stood at the entrance gate speaking into a camera. Park officials are searching for a missing graduate student from Georgetown University. James Hayes, age 26, was last seen entering the battlefield yesterday afternoon. His car remains in the parking lot, but there is no sign of Hayes himself. Rangers have conducted searches throughout the night with no results. They were looking for me. Of course they were. I had disappeared into the battlefield and never come out. At least not through normal means. My car was still there, my wallet and identification in the glove compartment. From the authorities' perspective, I had vanished. I should have called them immediately, told them I was safe, but I was not safe. Not really. The blood on my hands was proof. And I could still feel the pull, the connection to the regiment. It would be stronger at midnight, I realized. Every night at midnight, the spirits would call to me, and each time it would be harder to resist. My phone had been dead since last night, but the motel room had a charging cable. I plugged it in and waited for it to power up. When it finally came to life, I had dozens of missed calls. My advisor, my parents, my brother Tyler, the real Tyler, calling from California to check in. I called him first. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "James, Jesus, where have you been?" Mom and Dad are freaking out. The police called them. "I am okay," I said. "I got lost at the battlefield and my phone died. I am at a motel now. You need to call the police. They have people searching for you." "I will. I just needed to hear your voice first." There was a pause. "You sound weird. Are you really okay?" I looked at my blood-stained hands. "No, but I will be." We talked for a few more minutes. Then I called the authorities and explained that I had gotten disoriented in the trenches, spent the night lost in the woods, and finally made my way to a road where a trucker picked me up. It was close enough to the truth that they accepted it without too many questions. A sheriff's deputy came to the motel, took my statement, and told me I was lucky to be alive. "People go missing at Ravenfield sometimes," he said. "Usually during the anniversary week. You are the first one to come back in years. What happens to the others?" He shook his head. "Some are found days later, wandering the highway with no memory of where they have been. Others are never found at all. We assume they fall into ravines or get lost in the deep woods. The battlefield is bigger than it looks. Easy to disappear out there." After he left, I checked out of the motel and drove back to Georgetown. The 3-hour drive felt longer than usual. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see soldiers marching behind my car. The blood on my hands seemed to darken as the sun set. I made it back to my apartment around 7 in the evening. Everything looked normal, untouched exactly as I had left it 2 days ago. But I was different now, changed in ways I could not fully articulate. I had seen the other side, the place where the dead linger when they cannot let go. And part of me was still there, trapped in the trenches with the regiment. At midnight, I felt the pull. It was not physical, not something that moved my body. It was deeper than that. A yearning, a compulsion, a sense that I belonged somewhere else. I gripped the arms of my chair and forced myself to stay put. The sensation lasted for maybe 5 minutes, then faded. This would be my life now. Every night at midnight the call would come, and every night I would have to resist it. I did not know how long I could hold out. The woman at the battlefield had been there 6 days. The old man, 2 weeks. The teenage boy, months. Eventually, would I give in? Would I drive back to Ravenfield, walk into the trenches and take my place in the formation? The blood on my hands had not faded at all. If anything, it looked darker. Over the next week, I tried to continue my normal life. Attended classes, met with my advisor, worked on my dissertation, but I could not focus. My research on battlefield preservation seemed pointless now. How do you preserve a battlefield when the battle never ended? When the soldiers are still fighting, still dying, still trapped in an eternal loop? My advisor noticed the change. "You seem distracted, James. Is everything all right after your incident at Ravenfield?" "I am fine," I lied. "The police report said you got lost in the trenches overnight. That must have been frightening." "It was educational." The words came out harsher than I intended. He studied me for a moment. "Perhaps you should consider a different case study. Ravenfield has a complicated history. Not every battlefield is suitable for academic research." What he meant was, some places should be left alone. Some wounds never heal, some dead refuse to stay buried. I took his advice and switched my dissertation focus to a different battlefield, one in Pennsylvania, with no reputation for hauntings. But I could not stop thinking about Ravenfield. The soldiers trapped there. The living people like that teenage boy fighting every night, losing themselves piece by piece. On October 16th, exactly 1 week after my experience, I drove back to Ravenfield. This time I arrived during daylight and went straight to the visitor center. It was open now, the Memorial Week over. A ranger sat at the front desk. A woman in her 50s with gray hair and a name tag that read, Carol Zimmerman. "I need to speak with someone about the battlefield," I said. "About what really happens here after dark." She looked at me carefully, taking in the bloodstains on my hands that I had stopped trying to hide. "You walk the trenches during midnight hours?" "Yes." "And you escaped?" "Yes." She stood and locked the visitor center door, flipping the sign to closed. Then she gestured for me to follow her into a back office. The walls were covered with old photographs, maps, and documents. A filing cabinet in the corner had a label that read, "Incident Reports Confidential." "I have worked here for 18 years, Carol said. "I have seen 23 people go missing in the trenches. 15 of them came back eventually. 8 are still out there, still fighting with the regiment." She pulled out a folder. "You are James Hayes, Georgetown student. You went missing on October 9th and reappeared on October 10th. The police report says you got lost. But that is not what happened, is it?" "How do you know?" She held up her own hands. They bore the same bloodstains as mine, faded but still visible. "I went into the trenches 12 years ago. I was new here, did not believe the warnings. I thought I could handle anything. I was wrong. How did you escape?" "Same as you. Ran until I reached the road. But the connection stays. Every midnight I feel them calling. Some nights are worse than others. Anniversary nights, October 9th especially. The pull is almost irresistible. Is there any way to break it? To sever the connection completely?" Carol shook her head. "Not that I have found. The only people who have broken free are the ones who went back and freed the regiment entirely. But nobody has managed that. The spirits at Ravenfield are not like other battlefield ghosts. They are not just residual hauntings, echoes of past trauma. They are intelligent, organized, and desperate. They will do anything to keep soldiers in the ranks. There has to be a way," I said. "That teenage boy, the one in the University of Virginia hoodie. He has been there for months. If we do not help him, he will fade completely. He will become one of them." "I know," Carol said quietly. "His name was Michael. He was 19 years old. He came here in June to photograph the trenches for an art project. I tried to warn him, but he thought the rules were just stories." She closed the folder. "If you want to help him, if you want to help any of them, you need to understand what created this haunting in the first place." She pulled out an old leather journal from the filing cabinet. The cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. This belonged to Captain Nathan Aldridge, commander of the 14th Pennsylvania's C Company. He wrote it during the siege of Ravenfield in October 1864. Read it. It explains everything. I opened the journal. The first entry was dated October 1st, 1864. We have been in these trenches for 6 days. The Confederate artillery pounds us day and night. We have lost 20 men to the shelling. The survivors are exhausted, starving, and losing hope. General Hastings has ordered us to hold this position at all costs. He says reinforcements are coming, but I do not believe him. I think he has abandoned us here to die. I flipped through more entries. Each one became more desperate, more unhinged. By October 8th, Captain Aldridge was writing about making a pact. The men are talking about desertion. They want to retreat during the night, take their chances with a court-martial rather than certain death in these trenches. I cannot allow it. We are soldiers. We have a duty. Tonight I gathered the officers and proposed something radical. If we are going to die here, let us die in a way that means something. Let us make a blood oath, a promise that even death will not release us from our duty. We will hold this position forever if necessary. The men agreed. We cut our palms and pressed them together, swearing on our lives and our souls that we would never abandon our post. God forgive us. I do not think we understood what we were promising. The next entry was dated October 9th, 1864. The Confederate artillery hit us at midnight. 3 direct hits on our section of trench. Everyone is dead. All 47 men. I am writing this as my life drains away. I can feel the oath taking hold. We are bound here now, bound to this ground by blood and promise. We will rise at midnight and fight. We will do it forever. God help anyone who stumbles into our battle. The handwriting deteriorated after that. The final words were barely legible. The oath cannot be broken by the living. Only those who swore it can release the others. But we are dead. We are all dead. I closed the journal. They made a blood oath. They bound themselves to the battlefield through supernatural means. Correct, Carol said. Captain Aldridge and his officers created one of the most powerful hauntings in American history. They did not just die at Ravenfield. They chose to stay, chose to keep fighting, and they sealed that choice with blood magic or collective will or whatever you want to call it. So to break the haunting, we would need the officers to release the oath. But the officers are dead. They are part of the haunting. That is the problem. The only people who can end this are the ones who started it, and they are too far gone to make rational decisions anymore. Captain Aldridge is still out there in the trenches, still commanding his company, still enforcing the oath. He has been doing it for over 150 years. I thought about the soldier with the throat wound, the one who had explained the regiment to me. Had that been Captain Aldridge, one of the officers? What if we could reach him, I said. Convince him to release the oath? Others have tried. The haunting just absorbs them. You saw how quickly it marked you, pulled you into the formation. Imagine trying to have a rational conversation while bullets are flying and men are dying around you. There has to be a time when the spirits are more coherent. Before midnight, maybe, or right after dawn when the battle ends. Carol considered this. Dawn might work. The moment the sun rises, the spirits fade. There might be a window of a few seconds when they are aware enough to listen, but weak enough to be vulnerable. She looked at me. But you would have to survive until dawn. Fight with the regiment for 6 hours straight. And even then, Aldridge might not listen. He has been enforcing this oath for so long, it is probably the only thing he remembers about himself. I have to try, I said. That boy Michael. The woman. The old man. They are running out of time. Carol studied me for a long moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet pouch. This is silver from a melted-down Union officer's insignia. Confederate soldiers believed silver had power over ghosts. It might give you some protection, or it might do nothing. But take it anyway. I accepted the pouch. Inside was a silver coin, worn smooth from age. Thank you. Do not thank me. If this goes wrong, if you get trapped permanently, you will curse me for encouraging you. She walked me to the door. If you do this, do it soon. Every night you wait, Michael and the others fade a little more. Eventually, there will be nothing left to save. I left the visitor center with the journal and the silver coin. The sun was setting over Ravenfield, turning the sky orange and purple. In a few hours, midnight would come. The regiment would rise, and I would either free them or join them forever. I spent the evening in my car parked at the visitor center, reading through Captain Aldridge's journal multiple times. I needed to understand him. Understand what would make a man bind his soul to a battlefield for eternity. The answer became clear as I read his earlier entries, the ones from before the siege. Aldridge had been a school teacher in Pennsylvania before the war. He enlisted in 1861, believing he was fighting for a noble cause. His company was made up of his former students, boys he had taught mathematics and literature. He saw himself as their protector, their guide. When the war turned brutal, when those boys started dying in meaningless skirmishes, Aldridge could not accept it. He needed their deaths to mean something, so he made the oath, convinced his officers to join him, and damned them all to fight forever. It was tragic. It was insane. And it was completely understandable if you saw war through his eyes. At 11:30 in the evening, I gathered my equipment. The silver coin went in my pocket. I brought a bottle of water and some energy bars, knowing I would need physical stamina to last until dawn. I also brought a small audio recorder, thinking I might be able to document what happened, provide evidence for future researchers. The parking lot was empty except for my car and a park service vehicle that probably belonged to Carol. She had told me she would monitor from the visitor center, ready to call emergency services if something went wrong. Though what emergency services could do against a supernatural regiment, I had no idea. I walked down the path toward the main trench line. The moon was nearly full, providing enough light to navigate without a flashlight. The temperature had dropped into the 40s. My breath came out in small clouds. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence. An owl hooting in the distance, leaves rustling in the wind, my own footsteps on the dirt path. I reached the trench at 11:53 in the evening. 7 minutes until midnight. 7 minutes until the regiment manifested and I would either save them or become one of them. The trench looked different at night, even before the spirits appeared. The shadows were deeper. The earthen walls seemed taller. The wooden support beams creaked in ways they did not during daylight. It felt like the battlefield itself was alive, breathing, waiting for midnight. I climbed down into the trench and made my way to the junction where I had been before. The stone circle was still there, the paper message still placed in the center, though it looked more faded than I remembered. I positioned myself in the middle of the junction, gripped the silver coin in my left hand and waited. My watch showed 11:59. 30 seconds, 20, 10. Midnight arrived. The temperature dropped 30 degrees instantly. My breath turned to visible fog. Frost formed on the earthen walls, and the soldiers appeared. They materialized exactly as before. Dozens of Union troops in torn uniforms taking positions along the trench walls. The soldier with the throat wound was there, and the one without an arm, and all the others I had seen during my first night. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking their weapons, arranging ammunition crates, preparing for battle. And there, standing in the center of the junction giving orders, was Captain Aldridge. I recognized him from a photograph in his journal, tall, thin, with a beard and intense eyes. He wore an officer's uniform with captain's insignia on the shoulders. Unlike the other soldiers, he had no visible wounds. He had survived the initial bombardment long enough to write his final journal entry, then died more slowly from his injuries. He saw me immediately. "You returned. That was foolish. I came to speak with you, Captain Aldridge." He paused. Surprise flickered across his face. "You know my name. I read your journal. I know about the oath you made, about binding yourself and your men to this battlefield. Then you understand why you cannot leave. You took up arms during the midnight hours. You are part of the regiment now." He gestured to the other soldiers. "We all made our choice. Some of us chose it willingly, like my officers and I. Others, like you, were conscripted by circumstance. But the result is the same. We fight until dawn. We fight every night, forever." "It does not have to be forever," I said. "You can release the oath. You have that power." Aldridge laughed, a bitter sound. "Release it? Do you know what we are fighting for? We are holding this position so that other men can live, so that the Union can win, so that our deaths mean something. The Union won," I said. "The war ended in 1865. Your sacrifice worked. But it is over now. You can rest." "Lies." He turned away from me. "You're trying to trick us into deserting our post. It is the same thing the Confederates tried. Psychological warfare, trying to break our morale." The drums started. The Confederate assault was beginning. I only had seconds before the battle consumed everything, made rational conversation impossible. "Captain Aldridge, look at me." I held up my blood-stained hands. I am not a Confederate. I am from the 21st century. I am a researcher studying your battle. The war you are fighting ended over 150 years ago. You won. The Union survived. But you and your men are trapped here, reliving the same night over and over, and you are pulling innocent people into your formation. He stared at my hands, at the blood that would not wash away. For a moment, just a moment, I saw doubt in his eyes, recognition that something was wrong, that the war he was fighting no longer made sense. Then the Confederate soldiers appeared on the ridge, screaming their battle cry, and the moment was lost. Aldridge turned away and shouted orders. Defensive positions. Prepare to fire! The Union soldiers raised their rifles. The battle began, and I had no choice but to fight with them, my body moving automatically, taking up a weapon, loading and firing and killing men who were already dead. The battle raged for what felt like hours. We fought and died and reset and fought again. I lost count of how many times the cycle repeated. 10, 20? Each time I tried to reach Aldridge between battles, tried to make him understand. But he was too far gone, too absorbed in his duty to question it. Around 3 in the morning, I noticed Michael, the teenage boy in the University of Virginia hoodie. He was fighting next to me, his movements mechanical, his face blank. He looked worse than before. His skin had taken on a grayish tone. His eyes were sunken. He was fading, becoming more spirit than human. Michael, I said during a brief reset. Can you hear me? He turned slowly. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Who are you? My name is James. I came to help you. To help all of you. Help? He laughed, but it came out as a wheeze. There is no help. There is only the battle. Fight, die, reset. Fight, die, reset. That is all there is. No, there is more. Your name is Michael. You are 19 years old. You were studying art at the University of Virginia. You came here to take photographs. His expression changed. Pain and confusion mixing together. I remember. A camera. I had a camera. Where is it? You left it behind when they conscripted you. But you can get it back. You can leave here. You just have to hold on until dawn. Dawn. He shook his head. Dawn never comes. The battle never ends. It does. The spirits fade at sunrise. That is when we can break the oath. But I need you to help me reach Captain Aldridge. Make him listen. Michael looked toward where Aldridge stood shouting orders. The captain does not listen to anyone. He is the oath. He is the war itself. You cannot separate them. The drum started again. The Confederate assault resumed. Michael raised his rifle and returned to the formation, his moment of clarity gone. I fought through 3 more battle cycles, exhaustion making every movement painful. My shoulders ached from the rifle recoil. My hands were cramped from loading cartridges. My throat was raw from breathing gunpowder smoke. This was what the spirits endured every night. This was the hell Aldridge had created for his men in his desperate attempt to make their deaths meaningful. Around 4:30 in the morning, something changed. The Confederate assault came differently this time. Instead of a full charge, small groups of soldiers advanced under covering fire. They moved tactically, using the terrain, suppressing our position. This was not the mindless repetition I had seen before. Someone was adapting, learning. A Confederate officer reached our trench, jumped down, and immediately held up his hands in a gesture of peace. He wore a gray uniform with colonel's insignia. His face was weathered, older than most of the soldiers. And unlike the others, he looked aware, truly conscious. Captain Aldridge, he called out. I request parley under rules of engagement. Aldridge stared at him. Confederates do not honor parley flags. This war is over, Captain. We are both dead. Our men are dead. We are fighting an echo of a battle that no longer matters. I am asking you, one officer to another, to release your oath so we can all rest. You want us to surrender. I want us to stop killing each other. The Confederate colonel gestured at the trenches, at the soldiers on both sides locked in eternal combat. Look at what we have become. We are not soldiers anymore. We are monsters, trapping innocent souls in our war. That young man there, he pointed at Michael. He was not even born when this battle happened. He has nothing to do with our conflict. Yet we have condemned him to fight and die with us. Aldridge was silent for a long moment. I could see him struggling, the weight of over a century pressing down on him. If I release the oath, my men will have died for nothing. Their sacrifice will be meaningless. Their sacrifice was meaningful, I said, stepping forward. They held this position long enough for Union reinforcements to arrive. The next day, federal troops secured the entire region. Your stand here changed the course of the war in Virginia, but that is done now. The war is won. You can rest. How do I know you are telling the truth? How do I know this is not a trick? I pulled out the silver coin Carol had given me. It was warm in my palm despite the cold air. This was made from a Union officer's insignia. Silver from your own army. I am asking you as an ally, as someone who wants to honor your sacrifice, please release the oath. Let your men go home. Aldridge took the coin, stared at it. His hands were shaking. I do not remember home. I do not remember anything except this trench, this battle, this endless night. Then let your men remember for you, the Confederate colonel said. Release them. Let them find peace even if you cannot. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn was maybe 30 minutes away. This was our chance, the narrow window Carol had mentioned. The spirits were still strong enough to manifest, but weak enough to question their purpose. Aldridge looked at his soldiers, at the men who had followed him into death and beyond. Some of them were his former students, boys he had taught to read and write. Now they were worn down to almost nothing, their humanity eroded by endless repetition. I do not know how to release it, he said quietly. The oath was spoken in blood. It bound us to this ground. I do not know the words to undo it. You do not need special words, I said. You just need to mean it. Tell your men they are released from service. Tell them the battle is over. Give them permission to leave. Aldridge stood silent for a moment. Then he raised his voice, addressing the entire regiment. Soldiers of the 14th Pennsylvania C Company, by my authority as your commanding officer, I hereby release you from your oath. The battle is over. The war is won. You have fulfilled your duty with honor and courage. You are dismissed from service. Go home. Find peace. Nothing happened at first. The soldiers stood frozen, not understanding. Then slowly their weapons began to lower. The Confederate soldiers stopped advancing. Both sides just stood there looking at each other across the killing ground, realizing they did not have to fight anymore. The woman I had seen during my first night, the one in camping gear, started crying. We can leave? We can really leave? Yes, Aldridge said. His voice was hoarse, breaking. You are all free. I am sorry it took so long. I am sorry I kept you here. The old man with the photography vest fell to his knees. Thank God, Michael collapsed, sobbing. I went to him, helped him sit up. His face was regaining color, his eyes clearing. I remember now, he whispered. I remember who I am. I remember my family. The dawn light grew stronger. The spirits began to fade, but peacefully this time. They were not being torn away or reset. They were choosing to leave, stepping out of the formation and dissolving into golden light. Union and Confederate soldiers alike. Enemies for a century and a half, fading together as friends. The Confederate colonel saluted Aldridge. It has been an honor fighting alongside you, Captain. Even if we were on opposite sides, Aldridge returned the salute. The honor was mine, Colonel. I hope wherever we're going, the coffee is better than what we had in the trenches. The colonel laughed, then faded into morning light. One by one, the soldiers disappeared. The teenage boy Michael stood and looked at me.
Thank you.
I do not know your name, but thank you, James. And you are welcome. Get home safe. He smiled, then dissolved. The woman and the old man followed. Soon only a handful of spirits remained. Aldridge and a few of his officers, the men who had made the original oath. What about you? I asked Aldridge. Will you leave too? He shook his head. I cannot. The oath was sealed with my blood. I bound myself too tightly to this ground. The others are free, but I am still chained here. He looked at the lightening sky. But that is all right. I chose this. I chose to stay and fight. That choice is the one thing I can still control. There has to be a way to free you, perhaps, but not today. He handed me back the silver coin. Keep this. You might need it if you decide to help other battlefields. There are many places like Ravenfield, many spirits trapped by oaths and trauma and unfinished business. He paused. If you do help them, remember what you learned here. The dead do not need to be fought or exorcised. They need to be released, given permission to let go. The sun broke over the horizon. Full dawn. Aldridge began to fade. Tell my family, if any of them are still alive, that I am sorry. Tell them I did what I thought was right, even if it was wrong. I will. He smiled, then disappeared completely. The trench fell silent. No drums, no rifle fire, no spirits. Just an empty battlefield in the morning light. I climbed out of the trench and walked back to the visitor center. Carol was waiting at the entrance, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one without saying anything. We stood there watching the sunrise together. Did it work? She finally asked. Yes, most of them are free. Aldridge is still bound, but the others are gone. Michael? Freed. He was crying when he left. Happy tears. Carol let out a long breath. Good, that is good. She showed me her hands. The bloodstains had faded significantly. Now just faint brown marks instead of dark red. Mine are lighter too. Maybe breaking the regiment weakened the connection. We went inside the visitor center. Carol pulled up missing persons records on her computer. We should see if Michael and the others make it home. Sometimes spirits who are freed just disappear. Other times, the living people who were trapped wake up wherever they fell asleep like none of it happened. I hope they wake up, I said. They deserve to go back to their lives. We will know soon enough. Their families will call when they turn up. I spent the rest of the morning at the visitor center, helping Carol document what happened. We wrote detailed reports about the battle, the oath, how it was broken. This information could help other researchers, other people trying to free trapped spirits at battlefields across the country. Around 10 in the morning, Carol's phone rang. She answered, listened, then smiled broadly. Michael is awake. His parents just called. He was found in his apartment in Charlottesville, asleep on his couch. He does not remember much, but he is physically fine. That is wonderful. More calls came over the next few hours. The woman in camping gear had woken up in her car at a rest stop. The elderly man appeared in his hotel room. All the modern people who had been trapped were returning to their normal lives with no memory of the horror they had endured. It was like the battlefield was erasing the trauma, giving them a clean slate. But I remembered everything. And my hands still bore the stains, lighter but present. Carol noticed me looking at them. Those might never fully disappear. You are marked now, James. Connected to the spirit world in ways most people never experience. Other haunted places will call to you. Other trapped souls will recognize you as someone who can help. Is that what happened to you? She nodded. After I escaped Ravenfield, I started feeling pulls from other locations. I have helped free 3 other battlefield hauntings over the years. Each time the stains fade a little more. I think if I free enough of them, maybe the marks will disappear entirely. Or maybe we are meant to carry them. Reminders of what we have seen, what we have done. Maybe. I left Ravenfield that afternoon and drove back to Georgetown. The 3-hour drive gave me time to process everything that had happened. I had entered a haunted battlefield, fought with ghost soldiers, and helped free over 100 trapped souls. My academic research on battlefield preservation seemed trivial now. How could I write a dissertation about maintaining historical sites when I knew some of those sites were still active, still dangerous, still trapping people? When I got home, I did not return to my normal routine. Instead, I started researching other haunted battlefields, places where people had gone missing, where witnesses reported strange sounds after dark, where the dead supposedly walked. There were dozens of them across the United States. Small skirmish sites that nobody remembered. Forgotten trenches where soldiers had made last stands. Places where oaths had been sworn and trauma had soaked into the ground. Each one was a potential Ravenfield. Each one could be trapping spirits who just wanted to rest. 3 days after freeing the regiment, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a letter written in elegant cursive. Dear James, my name is Robert. I am a descendant of soldiers who fought at a battlefield in Tennessee called Hollow Creek. My great-great-grandfather died there in 1863, and I believe he is still trapped on that ground. I heard about what you did at Ravenfield. Carol Zimmerman gave me your address and said you might be able to help. The battlefield at Hollow Creek is not maintained by the Park Service. It is private land now, owned by a developer who wants to build houses on it. But people who walk that land at night report hearing voices, seeing soldiers, feeling cold hands grabbing at them. I went there myself last week and saw them. Dozens of spirits marching through what used to be a cornfield. They looked at me like they were drowning and I was a lifeline they could not reach. Please, if you can help them, if you can free them like you freed Ravenfield, contact me. I will pay for travel expenses, provide whatever resources you need. These men deserve peace. Sincerely, Robert Anderson. A phone number was included at the bottom of the letter. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, wanted to go back to my normal life and pretend Ravenfield had been a one-time occurrence. but I could feel the pull already, the connection forming. Hollow Creek was calling to me the same way Ravenfield had. I picked up my phone and dialed the number. Robert answered on the second ring. Hello? This is James. I received your letter about Hollow Creek. There was a sharp intake of breath. You will help? I looked at my hands, at the bloodstains that marked me as someone who walked between worlds. Yes, I will help. Tell me everything you know about the haunting. We talked for over an hour. Robert explained that Hollow Creek had been the site of a brutal ambush in August 1863. Confederate forces had hidden in the cornfield and opened fire on a Union supply column. The fighting lasted less than 20 minutes, but nearly 300 soldiers died in that cornfield. Their bodies were buried in mass graves that were later paved over when the county built a road. Now, a developer owned the land and wanted to build a subdivision, which meant construction equipment would be tearing through the graves, disturbing what little peace the dead had found. The spirits had become active in recent weeks, appearing more frequently, becoming more aggressive. Several construction workers had quit after experiencing unexplained phenomena. One man claimed a soldier in a Confederate uniform had threatened him with a bayonet. Another said he heard voices coming from the ground begging him to stop digging. When can you come? Robert asked. I need a few days to prepare. Research the battle, understand what happened there. I will drive down next week if that works. That works. Thank you, James. Really. My family has been trying to honor my great-great-grandfather for generations, but we never knew how to help him. Maybe now we finally can. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started researching the Battle of Hollow Creek. It was a minor engagement, barely mentioned in Civil War histories. But to the men who fought there, to the families who lost sons and fathers and brothers, it was everything. And now those men needed someone to free them from their eternal battlefield. I was that someone, whether I wanted to be or not. Over the next few days, I prepared for Hollow Creek the same way I had prepared for Ravenfield. Read battle histories, studied maps, tried to understand the tactical situation. I also reached out to Carol asking for advice on dealing with spirits who were angry, rather than just trapped. Angry spirits are harder, she said. They are not looking for release. They are looking for revenge or justice or some other resolution that might not be possible. You need to figure out what is keeping them bound and address that specifically. What if the issue is the mass graves being disturbed? Then you need to stop the construction. Get the graves protected legally. Once the spirits see that their remains will be honored, they might be willing to leave. That could take months or years. Then you find a temporary solution. Make them a promise, give them hope. Buy time until the permanent fix is in place. I spent the next week filing paperwork with historical preservation societies, contacting lawyers who specialized in burial site protection, and building a case for why Hollow Creek should be designated a protected historical site. It was exhausting bureaucratic work, but it was necessary. I could not free these spirits with words alone. I needed to fix the underlying problem. Finally, on October 25th, I drove to Tennessee to meet Robert. He was a man in his late 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. We met at a diner near Hollow Creek, and he spread maps across our table showing me the battlefield layout. The cornfield was here, he pointed. The road cuts right through it now. The developer owns everything from this tree line to that creek. He already has permits approved. Construction starts in 2 weeks unless we can stop it. I am working on that. I have lawyers looking at historical designation options. But in the meantime, I need to talk to the spirits, see if I can buy us time. Robert looked worried. They are not friendly, James. I told you that. They attacked those construction workers because they think nobody cares about them. Once they understand we are trying to help, they might cooperate. And if they do not, then I will figure out another approach. We drove to Hollow Creek that evening, arriving just before sunset. The developer's property was marked with orange survey stakes and construction warning signs. Earth-moving equipment sat idle near the road. The cornfield itself was mostly overgrown now. Tall grass and weeds replacing the crops that had been there in 1863. Robert and I walked into the field, following what had been the supply column's route. The ground was uneven, full of holes and depressions where old graves had settled. The developer had not done any digging yet, but his survey markers indicated he planned to level this entire area for house foundations. This is where my great-great-grandfather died, Robert said, stopping near the center of the field. According to his letters, he was at the front of the column when the Confederates opened fire. He took a bullet through the chest and died instantly. I knelt down, placed my hand on the ground. It felt cold, colder than the surrounding earth. The same supernatural chill I had felt at Ravenfield. This place was active, the spirits still present. I need you to wait by the road, I told Robert. If things go wrong, if I do not come back by dawn, call the police and tell them I am missing. Do not come looking for me yourself. You sound like you are expecting trouble. I am preparing for it. Big difference. Robert reluctantly walked back to his truck. I stayed in the field waiting for sunset, waiting for the spirits to manifest. They came the moment darkness fell. Not gradually, not cautiously. They appeared all at once, surrounding me. Confederate soldiers in gray uniforms, Union soldiers in blue, all of them looking angry, betrayed, forgotten. Their wounds were visible. Bullet holes, bayonet cuts, shrapnel tears. These men had died violently, and they had not forgotten it. A Confederate officer stepped forward. He wore a major's insignia and carried a cavalry saber. His face was twisted with rage. You are with the construction crew. You are here to destroy our graves. No, I said. I am here to protect them. My name is James. I am a historian. I am working to get this site designated as a protected battlefield so that your graves cannot be disturbed. Lies. We have heard promises before. People always promise to honor us, and then they pave over our bodies and forget we ever existed. I am not lying. I have lawyers working on this right now. We are filing paperwork with the State Historical Commission, but I need time. I need you to give me 2 weeks before you do anything to the construction equipment or the workers. The major laughed bitterly. 2 weeks. And then what? They will find some loophole, some legal excuse to build anyway. We have seen it happen at other battlefields. The living do not care about the dead. Some of us do, I said. I held up my hands, showing the bloodstains. I freed an entire regiment at Ravenfield battlefield last week. Over 100 souls who had been trapped for a century and a half. I gave them permission to rest, to find peace. I can do the same for you, but only if you trust me, the soldiers muttered among themselves. They had heard about Ravenfield, I realized. Spirits communicated somehow across distances, shared information about the living who could help them. A Union soldier spoke up. If you freed Ravenfield, why are you still marked? Why do you still carry the blood? Because the work is not finished. There are other battlefields, other spirits who need help. I am marked because I walk between your world and mine. It is the price I pay for helping. The major studied me for a long moment. Then he sheathed his saber. 2 weeks. We will give you 2 weeks. But if the construction starts, if they begin tearing up our graves, we will stop them. We will do whatever is necessary to protect this ground. I understand, and I promise I am doing everything I can. The spirits faded back into the darkness. The field became quiet again. Just ordinary land under ordinary stars. But I knew they were still there, watching, waiting to see if I would keep my word. I walked back to Robert's truck. He looked relieved to see me. It worked? For now. They gave us 2 weeks. We need to make those 2 weeks count. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal motions, historical research, and media campaigns. Robert and I contacted every preservation organization we could find. We got local historians involved. We arranged for ground-penetrating radar surveys that confirmed multiple burial sites in the cornfield. We flooded the State Historical Commission with evidence that Hollow Creek met every criterion for protected status. The developer fought back, of course. He had money and political connections. But we had something he did not, the truth. This land was sacred. These graves deserved protection. And slowly, public opinion shifted in our favor. On November 8th, exactly 2 weeks after my meeting with the spirits, the State Historical Commission voted to designate Hollow Creek as a protected Civil War site. Construction was halted pending a full archaeological survey. The developer was furious, but legally he could not proceed. That night I returned to the cornfield with Robert. The spirits appeared again, but this time they looked different. Less angry, more at peace. You kept your word, the Confederate major said. The construction has stopped. Our graves will be protected. Yes, you are safe now. The land will be preserved as a memorial to your sacrifice. The Union soldier who had questioned me before stepped forward. Does that mean we can leave? Can we finally rest? If you want to. You have fulfilled your duty. Your sacrifice has been honored. You do not need to guard this ground anymore. One by one, the soldiers began to fade. They did not disappear into golden light like the Ravenfield spirits had. Instead, they simply became less solid, less present until they were just shadows on the wind. Then those shadows dissipated and they were gone completely. Robert stood beside me, tears streaming down his face. Is my great-great-grandfather free? Yes, they are all free. We stood in the quiet cornfield for a while longer, then walked back to the truck. My hands were lighter now, the bloodstains fading even more. 2 battlefields freed, 2 groups of spirits released, and countless more still waiting for help. This was my life now, my purpose. I would travel to haunted battlefields across America, help trapped spirits find peace, protect sacred ground from being forgotten or destroyed. It was not the academic career I had planned, but it was meaningful in ways research papers never could be. As I drove back to Georgetown that night, my phone rang. Another descendant asking for help. Another battlefield calling my name. I answered, ready to begin again. The war might have ended in 1865, but for some soldiers, the fighting never stopped. And as long as they remained trapped, I would keep working to set them free. One battlefield at a time, one regiment at a time, until every last spirit found the peace they deserved. My name is James. I am 26 years old, and I walk between the living and the dead, carrying the blood of forgotten battles on my hands, honoring the sacrifice of soldiers who gave everything for causes they believed in. This is my story, this is my oath, and I will keep it until the day I die.